collaborating, you know.
There's been
Ustad, I have a question. Since you mentioned the biblical commentary, how do we deal with the issue when people in dawah get involved? So, for example, we did a podcast a couple of years ago where one of our guests had mentioned he's an expert in, we call a Muslim biblicist. And so there's an opinion that he brings out from the Quran that maybe he believes affirms the integrity of the Gospels, or he might affirm a certain narrative of the crucifixion that's not from the Quran itself. And it's an academic discussion. But then people in dawah get really upset about that. So how do we, and it seems like you're talking about, there's lots of different tafsirs that we can go with, but then sometimes in dawah, there's like a certain narrative that has to be pushed for the effectiveness of dawah. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. And, that's where when you have issues like, for example, the resurrection of Jesus, for example, right, is not a small subject, even in tafsir studies. It's a very rich, complex, deep subject. And when I had done work on Ali Imran year before last, when we got to that portion, I have a WhatsApp group of a bunch of guys that are Quran studies people that I turn to, and we were all engrossed in that ayah and that passage for a while before I could talk about it, to understand all positions on the subject, where those positions emanated from. The thing with da'wah is that we are trying to superimpose one narrative over all other narratives, and even my personal convictions are actually in line with the mainstream view on, for example, that subject. But I decided before I was going to hold my view to let go of my view and look at all views and explore all the work that's been done on this subject, all the arguments that have been made from all sides. And then even within our group, there were some that were actually of the opposing view. There were some people that are engrossed in Islamic scholarship that are of the view Jesus is not coming back. They're of that. I'm not of that view, but they are. And they have their reasons. I disagree with their reasons, but you know what? There needs to be, that's one of the beauties of Islam. If somebody holds a view, they substantiate their view with transparent arguments. And the transparency of their arguments is not, all the scholars said this. Homie, I don't even know what you mean by all the scholars, because you can't even name 10 of them. Like, what do you mean all the scholars? Or I don't do this in public, but when some guys come up to me and say, Akhi, the Sahaba had Ijmaa on this issue, I was like, okay, name 25.
Yeah, I think that concept of Ijma is also a little bit tricky too, when people make that claim that it's Ijma.
Right.
Like, so what is that? I mean, even the understanding of Ijma is a little bit different.
Black and white. In Dawah, we like things to be black and white, and some things are. And other things, here's the scholarship on it. A da'i should be able to say, here's the Muslim scholarship on this subject if you're interested. Instead of saying, I'm going to give da'wah on a subject that is scholarly, that is scholarly, and I don't have the grasp.
Here's the problem, though. A lot of times when these discussions happen, and you know that there are a breadth of opinions on certain issues, like, for example, use the example of Jesus, whether he's coming back or not. People say, well, you can choose that opinion, but you're not part of Sunni Islam then. What do you think about that?
That's the thing. That's not my area to decide. Who am I to decide who's part of Sunni Islam or not?
You have to decide.
I can say I disagree with this position. Here are my reasons. Now,
you're off the manhaj.
What label you choose for yourself is your business, not mine. That's none of my business. And what do I get, and what does the ummah get from me deciding whether or not you're Sunni?
Yeah.
What do we get from that?
Yeah. But